At this time, I would like to recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Garbarino, on his motion.
Mr. Chairman, out of respect for the witnesses that are here and the importance of this topic, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
The motion has been withdrawn. Then I will now recognize Ms. Ramirez for 5 minutes for her questioning.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Thompson. It's been a long time in this committee, but I want to start by talking about civil society, because civil society, in my opinion, is the first line of defense for our communities when authoritarianism, like the one that the president is attempting on our democracy, tries to attack us. And when Trump demands a public enemy and abuses our authority to target them, it is civil society that holds the line. I find it deeply undemocratic and un-American and unacceptable that my Republican colleagues are targeting more than 212 organizations across the country that assist community members, including immigrant children, since we've been talking about children as if you care about immigrant children, and asylum seekers to meet their basic needs. So I want to make sure that I remind my colleagues, since we've been here for a while, that Secretary Noem and this administration, a couple of things. First of all, crossing a border to the US to request the opportunity to apply for asylum is actually legal. Adjusting your status, if you have a pathway to do so, is legal. Supporting immigrants to apply for asylum, TPS, parole, and other forms of relief is legal. Supporting people to become United States citizens is also legal. Look, Republicans are going to lie and gaslight us all to help their fascist boss suppress dissent. Let me ask you, who drags the reputations of essential nonprofits in our communities? I'll tell you who. Authoritarians, bullies, these weak wannabe kings who are scared of civil society because they uphold the democracy. This hearing has been unserious, especially since the illegal and unlawful activities are actually being perpetrated by the people in the White House, the cabinet, and Republican leadership. Tom Homan said during an interview that ICE officers and Border Patrol agents don't need any probable cause to walk up to someone, question them, and detain them based on their physical appearance, occupation, or location. So he basically said that if someone looks like me and a couple of colleagues here, they can walk up and question us. That is racial profiling, which is illegal. At the same time, Holman consistently complains about the communities, like the one I represent from Chicago, for knowing their rights, because if they know their rights, it's harder for him to violate them. Tom Homan's disregard for our rights is unconstitutional. And since Mr. Homan, AKA the border czar, has the audacity to repeatedly brag about his legal immigration enforcement practices and disrespect due process, I demand he come before us to respond to the multitude of questions we have for him in person. But not just him. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is complicit in the construction of the alligator Alcatraz and the violations of human rights being perpetrated there. Florida's replica of one of our most notorious prisons is a clear illustration of the brutality of the Trump administration. They unlawfully robbed funds from cities supporting asylum seekers to build a CCOT-like detention center in one of the most dangerous places in the United States. Yet, DeSantis has the audacity to repeatedly brag about the inhumane conditions at Alligator Alcatraz and celebrate the violence being perpetrated with American tax dollars. Governor DeSantis must testify before this committee and provide answers to our questions about the atrocities being committed in his state. And he should also bring Secretary Marco Rubio. Because the truth is, we shouldn't be sending people to foreign countries when they may face torture and death with no chance for due process or appeal, particularly when they have not had their day in court and have not been subject to an extradition request. It is a gross violation of our shared humanity and our ideals as a nation to use money that's been appropriated to support refugees to disappear them to offshore prisons in countries they do not know and have no connection to. Yet Trump, Noem, and Rubio have repeatedly been caught red-handed, blatantly breaking the law, entering into backdoor agreements with foreign countries to deport people without due process. So, Mr. Chair, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that this committee subpoena Thomas Douglas Homan, Ron DeSantis, and Marco Rubio.
Does the gentlelady yield back?
I would like to make sure that my subpoena request is in record and is considered.
Yes, ma'am. Do you yield back?
I do.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to table.
Motion to table has been offered. The gentleman that moves the motion to table, this is, as we well know now, a privileged and non-debatable motion. All those in favor of tabling the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, no.
No,
In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. Is there a motion?
I'd like a recorded vote.
There has been a motion for a recorded vote. Mr. Clerk, thank you for your yeoman's work today. Mr. Clerk, if you will please call the roll.
Mr. Green of Tennessee. Mr. McCall. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Jimenez. Aye. Mr. Jimenez votes aye. Mr. Pfluger. Mr. Pfluger votes aye. Mr. Garbarino. Aye. Mr. Garbarino votes aye. Ms. Green. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Luttrell. Mr. Strong. My apologies.
Aye.
You were just called. Yes, sir. That's all right. Mr. Luttrell votes aye.
Apologize.
Mr. Strong.
Aye.
Mr. Strong votes aye. Mr. Burkeen. Aye. Mr. Burkeen votes aye. Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane votes aye. Mr. Ogles. Mr. Ogles votes aye. Mrs. Biggs. Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans votes aye. Mr. McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie votes aye. Mr. Knott. Ranking Member Thompson.
Nay.
Ranking Member Thompson votes no. Mr. Swalwell. Mr. Correa. No. Mr. Correa votes no. Mr. Tanadar. No. Mr. Tanadar votes no. Mr. Magaziner. No. Mr. Magaziner votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mrs. Ramirez. Mrs. Ramirez votes no. Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Kennedy votes no. Mrs. McIver. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Hernandez. Ms. Poe. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter votes no. Mr. Green of Texas. Mr. Green of Texas votes no.
Are there any members who wish to record their vote?
Mrs. Biggs votes aye.
Mr. Clerk, how am I recorded?
Chairman has not yet been recorded.
Guest votes aye.
Chairman Guest votes aye.
Would you please report the tally?
Point of order. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
are we going to leave the voting tally open until everybody gets here, as we did earlier? There are people that are still outstanding, missing votes on both sides of the table, bipartisan.
Ms. McIver, would you like to be recorded?
Ms. McIver votes no.
Would the clerk report the tally?
Mr. Chairman, are we going to leave the
Would the
vote
clerk
tally
report the
Chairman, on
tally?
that-
You're not recognized, Mr.
On
Kennedy.
that vote, there were 13 ayes and 9 noes.
The opinion of the chair, based upon the recorded vote, the motion prevails, and this motion is in fact tabled. At this point, I would recognize Mr. Strong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Guest. To our witnesses, I want to apologize to each of you. I know that y'all have walked into a spit-wad fight here, and I thank each of you for being here before us today. The American people deserve details, accountability, and especially when it comes to their taxpayer dollars, They deserve answers. You think about it, in recent years, far too much federal funding has gone to NGOs with little oversight, questionable practices, and in some cases, connections that raise serious red flags. In 2021, ICE awarded an $86 million no-bid contract to Endeavors for hotel stays for illegal immigrants. Mr. Howell, could you broadly talk about the risk to border security and accountability when the federal government outsources key functions to non-government organizations?
Absolutely. So there's a clear break in the paper trail and accountability. Once the money leaves DHS, there's little in the way of reporting requirements as to how it's spent, how it's maintained, where the illegals go, and all sorts of other standards that relate to condition. For example, in these nonprofit facilities, not much in the way of licensing requirements or living standards are there. Yet you have all this attention on ICE facilities for quite the opposite reasons. And so it's a vastly different ecosystem.
In his testimony, Mr. Rosas noted that certain non-government organizations were present during the recent unrest in Los Angeles, and many have played a role in obstructing federal operations. Mr. Howell, has your team identified any instances where federally funded non-government organizations appear to be aligned with political advocacy groups or campaigns in ways that could raise concerns about conflicts of interest or inappropriate influence?
Absolutely. I think the most recent, former Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, who was impeached, coming from Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, is an example of how this whole system works and the very cozy relationship between the nonprofits and governmental actors. As it relates to the violence we see in the streets, the foot soldiers and organizers, I would say, are 1 degree removed away from those receiving government funds, the giant organizations like Catholic Charities and others who do a lot more in terms of public advocacy. It's a very complex ecosystem, all pushing in the same direction.
Turning to Ms. Hopper, DHS OIG previously found that nearly 60% of certain emergency food and shelter programs reimburses lacked adequate receipts, didn't turn in receipts. Does this suggest a pattern of gross financial mismanagement or potential fraud among NGOs receiving DHS grants?
It absolutely does. When you're unable to provide receipts, and we have firsthand accounts of facilities serving rice and beans and charging the U.S. government a steak and lobster diet, that's a problem.
Ms. Hopper, in your view, how did the federal government's emphasis on rapid placement over thorough screening create opportunities for traffickers to exploit the unaccompanied alien children program?
They absolutely did. We interviewed incarcerated cartel members that knew when this administration took over that they were not going to have access to the same pipelines and taxpayer dollars that they had access to before. They know that when unaccompanied children came in, they would provide the name, number, and address of the sponsor, cartel controlled, so that the child could be put to work to pay off the debt that they owed their smuggler or trafficker.
Ms. Hopper, beyond the serious risk of exploitation and trafficking, there are growing concerns that some unaccompanied alien children may be vulnerable to recruitment by violent gangs like MS-13 or Tren de Agra. Is that something that has come up in your investigations and research?
It absolutely has. With the open borders, we had numerous transnational criminal organizations, criminal networks, bad actors come into this country, and with them, they are looking for recruits. And so when you have young teenagers looking for, they have food instability, housing instability, and they have a debt to pay off, they are going to pay that off by working with cartel members.
Thank you. To close out my time, one issue that has been raised by state, local law enforcement is the lack of communication by NGOs as they facilitate the movement and settlement of these aliens in local communities. Keeping law enforcement out of the loop creates public safety concerns and likewise does a disservice to the settlement of migrants. For any of our witnesses, can you speak to why these NGOs were encouraged not to work with local law enforcement and some of the downstream implications of these poor policies?
It's because that would have gone in the way of moving as many illegal aliens around the country as humanly possible, which was completely the opposite of the goal of the Biden administration and the NGOs. That's why they don't cooperate.
They didn't cooperate because they didn't have to cooperate. Contractually, they weren't required to, and so they didn't.
I concur with my fellow witnesses.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes Mr. Magaziner for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman. Donald Trump said he would focus on deporting criminals and people with removal orders, but that is not what his administration has been doing. Instead, the Trump administration has been going after innocent, hardworking people who have committed no crimes, including children, including U.S. citizens, children, grandparents, veterans, students who express unpopular political opinions, and yes, even United States citizens. The latest data from Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security, their own data, shows that more than 70% of those in ICE detention have no criminal convictions. They are locking people up who have tried immigrating to the United States the legal way, who presented themselves at ports of entry and asked for asylum. People like Andrew Hernandez Romero, a gay makeup artist from Venezuela, who came to the United States seeking asylum. Listen to this. He did not enter the country illegally. He presented himself at a port of entry near San Diego, tried to do it the legal way. And what did the Trump administration do? They put him on a plane to El Salvador, to a prison where he is still today. He has never been convicted of any crimes. He did not even enter the United States illegally. We have been asking the administration, can you give us a proof of life? Can you let us know that he's still alive? And they refused to do so. They deported a mother from Louisiana along with her 7-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son, both of whom are U.S. citizens, and the 4-year-old has stage 4 cancer. The mother of these children has said that she did not consent to having her children deported with her. Secretary Noem was here, and she said under oath that she had documentation proving that the mother had consented. She said she would provide it. She still has not. Representative Swalwell and I followed up with her. She still has not presented any documentation, any rationale for why this 4-year-old U.S. citizen with cancer was deported to a country that is not his own. And so when I hear my colleagues and when I hear our witnesses saying that they care about the lives of the children, I'm sorry, you have no credibility if you are not prepared to call out the injustice of deporting a 4-year-old with cancer, a 7-year-old with leukemia. Where's your sympathy for those children? No, Donald Trump gets a free pass, always, no matter what he does from this crowd. That's how we know that what we're hearing is political today, not a real concern for the children who have been caught up in all of this. There's more. This family in Oregon, 4 children, all U.S. citizens. These 4 children, along with their parents, who have no criminal record, were put into detention by ICE for 2 weeks in a Border Patrol facility that is not designed for long-term detention, a 10-by-10 cell that these 5 were in. They were just released after 2 weeks. These U.S. citizen children, where's the concern for them? We know why this is happening. It's because on May 21st, Stephen Miller summoned ICE officials to Washington and ordered them to make mass arrests, not to focus on criminals. He said, go after people at Home Depot and 7-Eleven. Because again, unlike what President Trump promised that they were going to go after the worst of the worst, Stephen Miller, who apparently is calling the shots, ordered ICE to round up everybody, regardless of whether they are hardened criminals or not. Please, someone tell me, what threat to our country do these children pose? Or their parents who have lived here and worked here for years and committed no crimes in the country? Is this the worst of the worst? Of course not. This is the same Stephen Miller, by the way, who was the architect of the family separation policy under the first Trump administration, during which 4,600 children were removed from their parents, some as young as 10 months old. Where's the concern for those 4,600 children? I haven't heard a word from any of our partisan witnesses or any of my partisan colleagues on the other side. You lose your credibility when you refuse to acknowledge the humanity of those 4,600 children who were separated purposefully from their families by the first Trump administration, or the children who are being unlawfully detained and deported today. I'll leave you with this. Pope Leo, His Holiness, posted on X about the Trump administration deporting people to El Salvador. He said, quote, "Do you not see the suffering? Is your conscience not disturbed? How can you stay quiet?" This is not what the American people want. Let's focus on going after real criminals, not children, not U.S. citizens, not people who are just trying to make a living who pose no threat. Let's focus on the criminals. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes Mr. Bucane for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We tend to find tactics of distraction. It's what we see happening with people that are trying to stop ICE from deportation efforts. We see that happening in the committee, and H.R. 2 is not law. What H.R. 2 was designed to do is to stop the $6 billion. That's an entire state budget. Many of us think about the size of your state budget. $6 billion under the Biden administration went to these non-government organizations, many of which are 100% federally funded, like endeavors, that reach the size of Save the Children. Ms. Hopper, you mentioned that in your testimony. Save the Children, been around for generations. It's designed that is privately funded. This Endeavor's non-government organization went from 52 million and went to over $1 billion because of government funding. Ms. Hopper, you talked about the NGOs being complicit. I don't know how many were stirred by your conversation about the 17-year-old child that was placed with someone that was discovered from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, had tattoos resembling that of MS-13 gang members. It was reported, supervisors overruled that. A month or two later, the 17-year-old is found dead. A man passed out, has pants de-pantsed, sexual activity being absolutely implied. And you're talking about all the different ways that these NGOs who got rich, $700,000 CEO figures for the CEO of Endeavors, and that man needs to be held accountable, John Almonds. We're talking about children that were ushered into the interior of the United States. These NGOs profited from it. Cozy relationships with the Democrat administration. Who knows what political payback there is? Who knows how many of those dollars that are still retained? When you're talking $1 billion retained by these organizations, who knows how many of the activities that are trying to stop deportation are still, those dollars are reproducing after themselves? Who knows how many times we will also see in New York City people being taught how to evade ICE, we know as NGOs. This is a lawmaking exercise. We hold these hearings to hold people accountable for the misuse of taxpayer funds. This is evil. And we haven't solved it, and we have to have legislation to stop any future administration from co-opting FEMA dollars and repurposing for these nefarious ends. All right, Mr. Howell, you all did a project where you took these NGOs, these 230 NGOs, some of them out of country helping bring people in, some of them in country working as an Uber service. You all did a $30,000 data search on cell phones, and you found among these 230 organizations, of which 15 United Nations spends by the U.S. government, funneled through the UN, ended up into some of these NGOs. You all found that you tracking 30,000 cell phones, that the Uber service, these organizations getting rich, went to every congressional district in this committee hearing, not just every congressional district in this hearing, every congressional district in the United States, moving unaccompanied minors, children to these sponsors. Only 4 congressional districts out of 435 congressional districts where these NGOs were not moving people. The gentleman who raped and murdered Laken Riley was among the list, who had 2 trips where he went to New York City, paid for at NGO expense. I'm sorry, taxpayer expense funneled through these non-government organizations. I need to let you talk.
You're absolutely right, sir. So for our study back in 2022, when this country, in towns across it, we're seeing flights being dropped off in the middle of the night with no advance notice. Citizens were living in fear. We decided to do a small, very small sample size of that huge mass of the NGO blob. We looked at only 30 locations for a 1-month period, grabbed the cell phone movement in and out of them, 30,000 devices, and from that very small sample size, they went to every single congressional district.
I've got 19 seconds left. I want to say this. You also report that in New York, you saw that these funds were being used for shelter programs, providing false residency documents to illegals, showing them how to provide false documents. Other NGO, you found in Mexico tied into this, illegal alien camps that had flyers telling people, don't forget to vote for Biden. You had NGOs advising illegals to lie to law enforcement to evade ICE, all a part of the organization's information. We need to spend more time on this because this could still continue in the future, absent legislation prohibiting and cranking the screws down to make sure this is never repeated. I yield.
Gentleman yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Kennedy, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Earlier, I entered into the record a press release from this Republican-led committee stating that the U.S. Conference of Bishops and Catholic Charities USA are under investigation, directly contradicting what was stated by my Republican colleagues in this committee earlier in our deliberations. I'd like to enter into the record a letter from Pope Francis to the bishops of the United States of America back on February 10th, 2025. Pope Francis sent a letter to the U.S. Conference of Bishops rebuking the Trump administration on its mass deportation policies, which included the deportation of U.S. citizens, mind you. And just a couple of months later, what seems like retribution from the Trump administration and congressional Republicans, now Catholic Charities USA and U.S. Conference of Bishops are being investigated, and funding is being cut to the humanitarian work that they're doing across our country. It's deeply offensive to Catholics across this nation, and it reeks of anti-Catholicism, and it needs to stop. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, as is the case with all of our districts, there are many organizations that do incredible work that help resettle new Americans and refugees. We lose sight of the selfless humanitarian work that these local non-government organizations do when we rope them in with the partisan grievances that we're hearing here today. In my own district, there's hundreds of refugees that have settled in just the last 3 months alone. But in the last year across our country, over 100,000 refugees have come to this great nation who have faced unimaginable hardship based on religion, race, nationality, political opinions, or sexual orientation. And they rely on the housing, case management, nutrition, and job placement services provided by these NGOs. And they're doing their best to make ends meet, to become a part of a new community. And you know, while that is critical, life-altering support made possible in large part to the federal government investment in these programs and funding streams are being cut by this administration and congressional Republicans. They're not only affecting jobs and livelihoods across the country in every single community represented on this committee, but they're forcing the workers to be laid off, and hence the work that they were doing to help new Americans assimilate into our country is not being done. Refugees can no longer rely on these services. Workers can no longer rely on support from the federal government to keep the lights on. And meanwhile, American people are watching as people, including U.S. citizens and children with cancer, are grabbed off the street by masked ICE agents in plain clothes. Migrants are mistreated at detention center by the administration's Department of Homeland Security. And people who came here legally to seek a better life see their futures in jeopardy under Trump's policies. And finally, I want to share my remarks about an incredibly pressing issue that this committee would be better off addressing and is suited to explore. It's already been addressed today, but all of our hearts are broken about what transpired in Texas with the flooding. just a week and a half ago. And in Kerr County, Texas, surrounding areas experiencing the unimaginable devastation and loss of life. Over 132 lives lost, over 100 still missing. And in the aftermath of this tragedy, current FEMA employees sounding the alarm about the Trump administration's slow and delayed response to Central Texas, and reporting suggesting that FEMA failed to answer many calls, thousands of calls, from victims in the days following the flooding. So make no mistake, emergency responders and local officials in Texas carried out acts of heroism to save lives and pick up the pieces of the lives that were shattered. But this committee has an obligation to investigate how the Trump administration's months-long degradation of FEMA, from defunding to layoffs to consolidation, played a role in these delays. 72 hours it took them to get people on the ground from FEMA into the flood zone to save lives and to help those poor people in that horrific disaster. And I'm so disappointed that there's not been more of a measured response from Republicans to address the authority and oversight of this committee. I've sent a letter with Congressman Gabe Amo, the ranking member of the House Subcommittee with Oversight over Emergency Weather Alerts, asking the administration to address these issues. I ask you, Chairman, and my colleagues, it's our responsibility to conduct this oversight in an urgent manner moving forward. Let's address these real threats and not chase political distractions. And on that note, I'd like to also, with unanimous consent, put into the record this op-ed from the former FEMA head, Deanne Criswell. Cuts to federal response programs guarantee future disasters. I yield back.
Without objection, the gentleman yields. Without objection, be entered into the record. The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today on how NGOs facilitated the Biden border crisis. You can see our colleagues are very upset that we're having this hearing today. They don't want to talk about this stuff. They don't want to talk about the 300,000 kids that we still don't know where they are. They're upset that President Trump got elected. They're upset that he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, and we're backing him up here in Congress. This is what the American people voted for because they saw 4 years of the carnage that these open border policies plagued on the United States. And we're talking about the NGOs that they used as middlemen to carry out their operations, like the Catholic charities they used to facilitate, normalize, and accelerate illegal immigration into this country. Ms. Hopper, you've worked closely with trafficking victims and survivors. I'd like to explore the role that the NGOs have played in enabling the trafficking and exploitation of unaccompanied alien children. Under the last administration, what safeguards were put in place to protect vulnerable unaccompanied children?
I previously discussed the post-placement welfare checks, which consisted of 2 phone calls. Again, if the sponsor didn't answer, the case was no longer followed up on. But there was also a notice of concern hotline where people could report concerns about the unaccompanied child's safety. But what this administration found was from August 2023 to January of 2025, 65,000 calls went unanswered. Those calls spanned from, complaints about stale bread all the way to being abused, to one case where a child's call was reporting that grown men were coming into his room at night and they were touching him. Nothing happened with that call. That call went unanswered until this administration took office, went through those 65,000 calls, made follow-ups, conducted a welfare check, and now that child has been rescued and that sponsor has been arrested. These are the safeguards that were put in place, but accountability and oversight was not had.
So you're telling this committee that the Biden administration, while they were letting all of these unaccompanied minors into the country, and as we've talked about today, they weren't keeping track of them, they issued these kids a hotline that they could call if they had trouble with the sponsor family, that they were put with, and you're saying that 65,000 calls to this hotline designated to protect these kids went unanswered? Is that what you're telling this committee?
Yes, sir.
Wow. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I believe you also said, Ms. Hopper, that according to your research, it was easier to adopt a pet or a dog than it was to get one of these children. Is that what you said?
I said that it was easier to get a child, yes, than to adopt a dog. You actually had to provide more paperwork to adopt a pet from a pet shelter than you did to sponsor a child.
Yeah, and think about it, guys. This is exactly why the American people are so upset. This is why they voted for the president, and this is why they voted for this agenda, to not only remove people from this country, to secure our borders, but to find these kids. I mean, this is completely atrocious in a day and age where we're starting to wake up to the realities of sex trafficking and what's going on with these kids. They let all these kids in. We still don't know where over 300,000 of these kids are. And you're sitting here testifying, saying that they gave a hotline for these kids to report if they were okay, if they needed anything, and 65,000 calls went unanswered. Do you know how many staffers the administration assigned to answering these phones and helping these kids?
One.
One staffer? Any idea how many hours a day this staffer was working?
No.
Maybe that's why there were 65,000 calls that weren't answered from these little kids, huh? Unbelievable. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. MacGyver, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to start off by just advising that witnesses should definitely come here with the facts. One of the witnesses today stated that I was arrested, and that's a complete lie, and I want to put that on the record. Mr. Chairman, this hearing is a shame, a sham, and a complete disgrace. Just because Republicans don't want to see it doesn't mean it's not true. The charities the majority is targeting are doing the Lord's work, quite literally. Republicans are trying to misrepresent and undermine and attack the work of these charities due to assist the most vulnerable and underserved, all while quoting scripture from the Bible. No matter what narrative my colleagues across the aisle try to spin, the truth is that these religious organizations and other nonprofits are not political. They seek to provide aid to those who are fleeing violence and seeking asylum. To every person working at the charities, religious organizations, and other NGOs that are the subject of this hearing, I say this to you: thank you, and I am sorry. Thank you for providing the services and resources that our government has failed to provide to desperate people who are in need. And I am sorry that Republicans are trying to intimidate you and prevent you from carrying out this critical work. I am appalled that this hearing is being used as an attempt to target religious organizations and prevent them from serving their communities in accordance with their faith. Meanwhile, the Republican majority has not done an ounce of oversight of the Trump administration, even as Trump and his administration tear apart DHS. In January, Trump installed unelected billionaire Elon Musk as the leader of Doge and empowered him to derail and demonize critical functions across the government, including at DHS. Elon has long had massive unexplained ties to China. He did not file any kind of financial disclosure, even as he took a role in overhauling the federal government. But did the Republican majority demand any information on Musk's conflicts? Did they ask questions about his ties to the Chinese government, a topic that draws their interest in just about every context every week on this committee? No, they did not. Instead, they turned a blind eye to Doge, and Doge installed unqualified staffers across DHS, gained access to sensitive security systems, and drove off untold members of dedicated civil servants carrying out important missions to secure our homeland. Doge has been dismantling and reshaping DHS for 6 months now. Has the Republican majority held a single hearing or called a single witness to examine these massive changes to the department? No, they have not. More recently, Elon Musk and Donald Trump had a very messy breakup. Perhaps men are just too fragile and emotional for these jobs. But I digress. We did, in fact, learn a few things during this breakup. On June 6, Musk tweeted, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT." Wow, now that's some inside information. Elon Musk, Donald Trump's right-hand man, who spent hundreds of millions of dollars to help get Trump elected, says the president is tied to the notorious child sex predator. And look what we're talking about today. And indeed, over the past several days, Trump has moved to permanently squash the release of the Epstein files. Now, my Republican colleagues have long expressed a desire to fight human trafficking. Woohoo, talking about it today, but yet scared to call out to ask the administration to release the Epstein files. Surely that must be something we can all get behind. Surely we can all agree that if Elon Musk has evidence that Donald Trump is or has ever been involved in child sex trafficking, then Musk should be compelled to come share his evidence with this committee and the public. Now, I'm sure some of my colleagues may argue that Musk is just blowing smoke, but who's to say? Let's find out. I might have my doubts, but if you think that under oath Musk would admit he does not actually have any evidence to back up his claims, then great, let's find out. Let's do some real work on this committee. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes Mr. Ogles from the state of Tennessee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to enter into the record for unanimous consent a news story by News Nation updated on June 7th, 2023 by Mr. Ventura and Mr. Markham, talking about the NGOs using tax dollars to relocate migrants. And quite frankly,
Without objection, the document will be entered into the record.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And when you look at their track record, and there's some statistics I'll quote, and most of this can be directed at you, Ms. Hopper, but to the other two witnesses, feel free to chime in. We'll just have an open dialogue, is they were clearly putting profit over the safety of these children. And my colleagues on the other side have spent most of the day disrupting this hearing, stalling this hearing with procedural votes. Meanwhile, we have 325,000 children that are unaccounted for. We have 65,000 calls of concern that went unanswered. And yet, all they want to talk about is Trump and Elon Musk, some tweet that has since been redacted. I mean, it's nonsense. And by the way, you know, one of my colleagues mentioned religion, you know, saying that, you know, we over here are righteous. And yet, I do believe if you look at the context of this hearing, they're the ones that are quoting the Pope and the Catholic bishops and all the other stuff. Meanwhile, I want to talk about the children. How do we find these 300,000 kids? How many of them are being sexually abused right now? I think in your testimony, 70%, or one of your testimonies, 7% of the records revolving children were falsified. 80% of the women coming into an El Paso shelter were sexually assaulted. Where's the outrage on the other side, folks? That's what this is about. This should be a nonpartisan committee. We're talking about the safety of the homeland. We're talking about 300,000 children that right now could be being raped systematically and trafficked. And they want to talk about the boogeyman. I want to talk about the boogeyman too. I want to talk about all the predators and the gangbangers and the murderers that were allowed into this country. Just in Nashville, the ICE raid, where they arrested murderers, rapists, traffickers, child traffickers. That's who they're protecting. Let's talk about these 300,000 kids. How do we find them? How do we undo this mess? And oh, by the way, the idea that none of these folks are criminals, if you came into this country on false pretense, that is a crime. They're not migrants, they're illegal immigrants. And they're breaking our laws, and I've had enough of this crap. Let's talk about the facts around this hearing and these children. Ms. Hopper.
There needs to be complete coordination with the state and local agencies. They know that UACs were sent to their specific districts, their counties. There's a database on the ORR website specifically outlining how many UACs were sent to to certain counties and cities across all 50 states. And so with the help of the local, state, and federal agencies, that would be a good place to start. But a lot of these state agencies are stonewalling and blocking our efforts because they want to protect illegal aliens over finding unaccompanied children.
Mr. Howell.
One of the best ways to find these children is to dramatically ramp up worksite enforcement by ICE. A lot of these kids are working in factory farms, weed farms, all across the country. And until ICE begins increasing their activities there, I don't think we will find a lot of these missing kids.
Mr. Ross.
Congressman, what I'll say, I mean, I'll echo that. They came here because they wanted to work, obviously in horrible conditions. And what I'll say, and what I'll address is that it's false to say that these raids that are happening are not targeting the worst of the worst. I was with Border Patrol in Los Angeles County just recently, and they did an operation at a Home Depot, and they found a convicted pedophile because he's there looking for work, and those are the people that they want to hire to bring them into their homes around their families. It doesn't work that way. So I would concur that worksite operations need to increase, not decrease by any stretch.
Mr. Chairman, you know, I thank you for the importance of this hearing, the topic. I thank you to the witnesses. But as we look at the systematic trafficking that we've seen across this country, Ms. Hopper, you're an expert on this. When you look at the distribution networks that the cartels have into our country, a distribution network, by the way, that would rival FedEx or the United Postal Service, and their ability to move product. And for them, product is human trafficking. Product is kids and women. And so with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just briefly raise my voice in favor of NGOs and the service they provided. As a law student, I worked with NGOs dedicated to immigrants, but not just to make sure that they could normalize their immigration status. I worked with immigrants on behalf of a cause that I think all Republicans support. I worked with immigrants to help them assimilate to United States culture and identity. I helped them study for their U.S. citizenship exams. And I could see their hope, their commitment. I would even say they were more patriotic and committed to this nation than many people who are born and raised here. I worked with NGOs to help victims of domestic violence who fled their home countries with their children, fleeing from terrible, terrible, terrible life circumstances, and people who found hope and security in this nation, and people that I was proud to see this nation welcome to provide them safety and security and a brighter future. So I really profoundly regret to see this Congress, to see this committee attack NGOs so broadly under a false pretext that this is really to protect the people. We are attacking people. We are attacking institutions that help people. And I want to make sure that history reflects the side that we, the Democratic caucus, this side of the aisle, stand on today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, who wishes to be recognized?
Crane from Arizona.
Ms. Crane?
Request to enter into the record from Oversight Project article tracking movement of illegal aliens from NGOs to the U.S. Interior.
Without objection, shall be admitted into the record.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson?
I'd like to enter into the record the statement of Bishop Nicholas DiMaggio of Brooklyn, New York, in which he states, from our Catholic faith perspective, the issue is ultimately about human beings.
Without objection, will be entered into the record. With the gentleman yielding, the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Biggs.
Thank you, Chairman Guest, and thank you to our witnesses for your patience today. This hearing is important, and I think it's crucial that we know the role that the NGOs played in the invasion of our country. While the Biden administration opened the doors, the NGOs fueled the invasion. They provided or coordinated transportation to the interior of the country, along with food, shelter, legal fees, and more, all with your tax dollars. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record this piece of the Free Press titled "Nonprofits Are Making Billions Off the Border Crisis."
Without objection, it shall be entered into the record.
So Global Refuge, one of these Trojan horses, listed $202 million in revenue in 2022, up from $50 million in 2018, which is 86% of that money came directly from the taxpayers. Another organization, which we've already talked about today, Endeavor, received 99.6% of its revenue from taxpayers. And these groups made profits by forcing us to pay for the invasion of our own country. So my first question, and I would really like to leave it open for any of you to please feel free to comment, but it's kind of simple. How many illegals did these bad actors bring in? And how much of our hard-earned tax dollars did they spend? And did they even attempt to determine if any of the illegals that flooded our homeland were violent criminals?
Congresswoman, what I'll say is that it's also not just the unaccompanied minors that were processed through. There wasn't DNA testing being done with family units who were being presented and turning themselves over to Border Patrol. So there were quote-unquote family units that these NGOs also helped and processed. But you ask any border official, any border enforcement, they'll tell you that they rent kids out to act as family units, or they're trafficking these kids as family units. So I know, understandably, we're talking a lot about the unaccompanied minors, and that should definitely have a big focus, but we also can't forget the fake family units that took advantage of the Biden administration not doing DNA testing to ensure that those were actual families.
That was a very good question. Thank you so much for that. Between the ports of entry, it's really hard to determine how many bad actors and criminal networks came into the interior of the country during the Biden-Harris administration. I know it's frustrating to hear that we keep mentioning the Biden-Harris administration, but when you have over 300,000 children that went missing under that administration, it is worth asking because they are still missing. With these criminal networks, we worked with other nonprofit in California. Again, we're not against nonprofits. We are against the ones that take taxpayer dollars and mismanage the funds and abuse the funds, to reiterate for the record. But they found numerous cell phones of smugglers. The GOAT initiative works with local law enforcement and turns over cell phones that include data as far as how to obtain a child once you're in the United States, what pathways to take, and even include the nuclear posture of the United States. These are not, your average construction worker. And when you say they have no criminal background, please understand that might be in the United States. You don't know where they came from, their country of origin, what their criminal background was in their country of origin, on top of the fact that when they had their false documents, if their documents said Mickey Mouse, that is what Border Patrol wrote down. So how do we know what their backgrounds truly are from their home countries when we did no meaningful checking of the false documents that they provided to our agencies? Thank you.
Congresswoman, to answer the heart of your question, I think it's virtually all of the illegals that were released into the interior. Just like it's virtually impossible for an illegal to get to the southern border without going through cartel custody, it is virtually impossible for the illegals, once they are released, to not reap a direct or indirect benefit from the nonprofit system. That's why this is so detestable. They had built a system on parallel with the cartels. The NGOs and the Biden administration operated as the final chain in the link of this human smuggling, not only of children, but of everyone who came illegally.
Thank you very much. It's very disheartening, and I appreciate your insight on this. And with that, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartedly support all of my Democratic colleagues' efforts today to demand information and accountability about the cruel and profoundly un-American mass deportation agenda being undertaken by the Donald Trump administration and his allies, as well as this administration's dereliction of duty in federal disaster response amid hurricane season. However, I would like to take a few moments to highlight a critical financial issue affecting families and businesses in Louisiana: flood insurance. Flood risk is not just a coastal issue. It affects all of us. Since 1996, Flood events have occurred in all 50 states and 99% of them in the U.S. counties. That means nearly every single American community has experienced the economic, environmental, or emotional toll of flooding. With climate change intensifying the frequency and severity of major storms, the need for accessible, affordable, and transparent flood insurance has never been more urgent. Unfortunately, FEMA's implementation of Risk Rating 2.0, the new methodology for calculating National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP premiums, have created serious affordability problems for our constituents. Let me be clear. Congress did not pass legislation to mandate Risk Rating 2.0, nor did we have any meaningful input in its development. FEMA claims that this overhaul falls under its administrative authority. However, FEMA bypassed a formal rulemaking process, conducted no economic impact analysis, and declined to brief Congress before the implementing of one of the most sweeping changes to NFIP in its history. In fact, FEMA has continuously refused to release its full Risk Rating 2.0 methodology. Policyholders do not have access to their property level rating factors inputs, except for the few listed on their declaration page, which are made available only after coverage is purchased. The lack of transparency is unacceptable. In my district, the consequences are real and deeply concerning. Premiums are rising drastically, and in some cases, unpredictably exasperating our ongoing housing affordability crisis. Louisiana is not alone in this issue. There are over 1.5 million policyholders in Florida and approximately 700,000 in Texas, among others. On average, Risk Rating 2.0 and NFIP policies will cost $1,800, representing a 103.6% increase over legacy rates. There are 17 states with higher average rates than Louisiana. Rates will increase by over 50% in 41 states. Some of the states with the highest average risk rates include Maine at 183% rate increase, West Virginia at 171%, Mississippi at 149%, Florida at 131%, and New York at 85%. Among metropolitan areas, my district in New Orleans has the second highest average insurance coverage, behind only Miami. For working families already struggling to keep up with the mortgage payments, high insurance costs could mean having to choose between flood protection and other essential needs. Many have opted out of NFIP altogether, leaving them and their entire communities vulnerable and uninsured in the face of disaster. Within just 2 years of implementing Risk Rating 2.0, NFIP lost over 215,000 policyholders, and nearly 5% of all policies. States that saw the biggest decline in policyholders were West Virginia, losing nearly 20% of policies, Oklahoma about 18%, and Texas with 15% decline. Not far behind, over 1 in 10 policyholders in Louisiana has opted out. This is not a partisan issue. I have been highly critical of Risk Rating 2.0 throughout the Biden administration, with even former Secretary Mayorkas acknowledge that Risk Rating 2.0 is flawed. Yet during both Biden and Trump administrations, FEMA continued to push forward without correcting course, listening to Congress, or properly engaging the people most affected by these changes. The bottom line is this: we need a flood insurance system that protects, not penalizes, American families. It should be grounded in science, equity, and economic reality, but also accountability and transparency. Congress must have a role in shaping the future of the NFIP, and our constituents deserve to know how decisions impacting their homes and livelihoods are made. Mr. Chair, I'd like to enter into the record this research from the Coalition of Sustainable Flood Insurance, which lays out details on this issue.
Without objection.
As well as a letter from the entire delegation, Louisiana delegation, bipartisan, Republican, Democrat. My dear friend, Mr. Higgins, who's not sitting here now, also signed off on this letter.
Without objection, it will also be admitted.
I urge my colleagues to This letter demanding information on how public mitigation projects have impacted Louisiana. To date, we have not gotten any information. I urge my colleagues to support the bipartisan, common sense legislative efforts that will bring oversight, affordability, accountability, fairness back to the National Flood Insurance Program, because flood insurance isn't something that we should wait. However, we need to do this now. Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Clause 2K6, Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena Elizabeth Asher, Assistant Administrator of the Federal Insurance Directorate of FEMA, to provide this committee with the details and agencies has been withholding from Congress.
Is there a motion?
Here is a motion.
Move to table.
Motion to table. It's in here somewhere. Here we go. The gentleman moves to table. The motion to table is privileged and non-debatable. We will allow a few moments for members to return to the committee room, as the room, let the record reflect, is very vacant at this point. So we will suspend momentarily for that to take place.
Crypto notice.
There has been a motion to table in this manner brought forth by Mr. Evans. The motion is privileged. It is non-debatable. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Is there a motion?
Motion to have a recorded vote. Mr.
Motion for recorded vote has been requested by the ranking member. If the clerk would please call the roll.
Mr. Green of Tennessee. Mr. McCall. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Jimenez. Aye. Mr. Jimenez votes aye. Mr. Pfluger. Mr. Garbarino. My apologies. Mr. Pfluger, is that aye? Yes, sir. Mr. Garbarino. Ms. Green. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Luttrell. Mr. Luttrell votes aye. Mr. Strong.
Aye.
Mr. Strong votes aye. Mr. Burkeen. Aye. Mr. Burkeen votes aye. Mr. Crane. Aye. Mr. Crane votes aye. Mr. Ogles. Aye. Mr. Ogles votes aye. Mrs. Biggs. Aye. Mrs. Biggs votes aye. Mr. Evans. Aye. Mr. Evans votes aye. Mr. McKenzie. Aye. Mr. McKenzie votes aye. Mr. Knott. Mr. Knott votes aye. Ranking Member Thompson.
Nay.
Ranking Member Thompson votes no. Mr. Swalwell. No. Mr. Swalwell votes no. Mr. Correa. No. Mr. Correa votes no. Mr. Tanadar. Mr. Magaziner. No. Mr. Magaziner votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mrs. Ramirez. Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Kennedy votes no. Mrs. McIver. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez votes no. Ms. Poe. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter votes no. Mr. Green of Texas. Mr. Green of Texas votes no.
Are there any other members who wish to be recorded? Mr. Clerk, how am I recorded?
Chairman has not yet been recorded.
Guest votes aye.
Chairman Guest votes aye.
You will please report the totals.
On that vote, Mr. Chairman, there were 12 ayes and 8 noes.
In the opinion of the chair, based on the recorded vote, the motion passes and the request has been tabled. Mr. Carter, did you yield back? I was trying to think. Have you yielded the rest of your time, I believe, if I'm not mistaken? All right, at this time then, the chair would recognize Mr. Evans for 5 minutes for his questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, of course, to the witnesses for coming. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record this committee's report from last year in which then CBP Chief Patrol agents told the committee that, quote, NGOs will facilitate the migrants' travel plans to wherever that's going to be while they wait for their immigration hearing and, quote, once they're released from our custody, the NGOs then provide them with potentially transportation up to the Phoenix area or other areas of the interior to help them make travel arrangements, things like that.
Without objection, the document will be entered into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also for the record, a statement by now CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott in this same report in which he says that cartels and NGOs actually coach would-be border crossers on claiming asylum after being apprehended by the Border Patrol.
Without objection, will be entered into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for everybody that stuck with us through today, I think it's been extremely clear that certain NGOs have benefited significantly from the Biden administration's open border policies to the point where they actually found migrants before they reached the border to encourage them to illegally enter the United States in return for all of the amnesty and other benefits they could obtain. More benefits, in fact, than many American citizens receive, including free cell phones and upscale hotel stays. Mr. Howell, first question will be to you. your organization's in-depth study tracked devices given to illegal immigrants by border NGOs and showed, unsurprisingly, that my part of the world, Denver, Colorado, and the surrounding areas, was one of their more popular final destinations. The sanctuary state policies in Colorado and Denver have allowed NGOs and government entities to spend millions of taxpayer dollars to provide services to illegal immigrants and have proliferated crime in our area, making Colorado this year the second most dangerous state in the country. When the Biden admin and Democrats in Colorado reimburse NGOs to provide these services and benefits, how does that incentivize illegal immigration and encourage criminal enterprises to conduct business in the United States and in places like Denver and Colorado?
Simply put, if you build it, they will come. It is a completely cost-free for the illegal alien transportation and funding stream with everything they could ever need or want, things beyond what are even applied or given to our poor and needy in the United States. It also takes a lot of pressure off the cartels and makes it much easier for them to sell in the first instance for an illegal to come to the border in the first place. And don't take my word for it, look how the border is secure now. People aren't even trying to come because they know these benefits aren't available to them even in the event they're able to get in.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper, next question will be to you. I was a cop and a soldier for about 22 years combined, and I am Latino. And unfortunately, I know through those experiences and others exactly how bad the crime situation is in Colorado. We're the national headquarters for Tren de Aragua, which I think we all know now, violent Venezuelan prison gang that does a lot of bad things, to include human trafficking. You have substantial experience in the dangers that unaccompanied minors face on their journey to the border and then once released into the United States. Currently, the federal government is trying to review sponsors in Colorado. We've heard earlier today, over 300,000 kids that we're trying to track down. Federal government has reached out to Colorado to try to see if these kids that may be in Colorado are in safe environments. However, state laws in Colorado that my governor has signed more than once are preventing the release of this basic information to federal investigators and obstructing the ability to do just basic safety checks. How do state policies that restrict federal oversight of unaccompanied minors and NGOs that fail to properly screen these sponsors enable cartels like Tren de Aragua and MS-13 to exploit or recruit children in the United States, and then again specifically in sanctuary jurisdictions like Colorado?
It absolutely encourages cartels and criminal networks to direct their activity to sanctuary cities and states, knowing that those protections will exist for them and knowing that there isn't that cooperation and federal oversight and accountability for that. So unfortunately, I don't know what the motivation is for your state's governor, and I'm sorry for that, because of the fact that that isn't helping these children. That isn't helping the citizens of Colorado. That isn't helping your constituents when you're protecting illegal aliens over that of those that elected you.
Thank you, and I got 4 seconds, Chairman. Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned about children. I'm concerned about the 37 children who've lost their lives to the Guadalupe River in Texas. I'm concerned that we're not having a hearing to address the needs of these families. These are people who had their children at a summer camp. They expected to pick their children up. They didn't expect to see their children waste away. Many of them haven't been found. I'm concerned about children too. But I'm concerned about all children. I don't segregate children. I don't conclude that some children have lives that are worth more than others. I want to see something done about those children. Why aren't we having a hearing to deal with the needs of the people of the state of Texas and other states too that may have similar needs? I don't segregate. I integrate children. Let's do something about all children. and to proclaim this hearing to be one that is related to charities. I'm going to defend Catholic charities. I don't believe you think that Catholic charities would have 65,000 children mistreated. I just don't believe you think that. I don't think so. Catholic Charities does an outstanding job. I would love to think that we could resolve all of these things today, but apparently we cannot. Let me go to something that I think would be relevant for this hearing as it relates to the state of Texas. This, my friends, is a picture of Mr. David Richardson, missing. Have you seen the acting FEMA administrator? Where is he? Why is he not here to help us understand what's happening to those children in Texas? To explain to those parents why FEMA has been feckless and ineffective. I have intelligence in my hand indicating that an internal FEMA assessment ordered by David Richardson, the current senior official performing the duties of FEMA administrator, dated May 12, 2025, paint a dire and deeply troubling picture. According to these internal reviews, FEMA is fundamentally unprepared to respond to national emergencies due to severe workforce reductions. Hello? Workforce reductions, terminated contracts, and systemic management under the current Trump administration. I care about all children. I want to help resolve any issues that we have with children. I don't want to see us decide that we can't have a hearing to deal with this man who's missing in action. Let me have this, please. Missing in action. Missing at a time when he ought to be on the ground in the state of Texas. Where is he? Why aren't we subpoenaing him? Why don't we get him here? Well, let's find out if we really are serious about children. Let's find out if we can get him here. Mr. Chairman, given that the secretary won't appear and can't be subpoenaed because you've already taken that issue up, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena David Richardson, senior official performing the duties of FEMA administrator. I want to see where you stand. Why can't we have him here? Why can't he come in and talk about? You have these three witnesses here to talk about the other children? Good. Let's get him here. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Is there a motion?
Move to table.
Motion to table. All those in favor of the motion to table, and before we call the motion is non-debatable and is privileged. So all those in favor of the motion to table, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, no?
No,
In the
Mr.
opinion
Chairman.
of the chair, the ayes have it. Yes, sir, Mr. Green.
Green of Texas would have this committee go on record explaining why.
Recorded vote has been requested. Mr. Clerk. You will please call the roll.
Mr. Green of Tennessee. Mr. McCall. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Jimenez.
No.
Mr. Jimenez votes no. Mr. Pfluger. Mr. Garbarino. Ms. Green. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Luttrell. Mr. Luttrell votes aye. Mr. Strong.
Aye.
Mr. Strong votes aye. Mr. Burkeen. Mr. Crane. Mr. Ogles. Mrs. Biggs. Mrs. Biggs votes aye. Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans votes aye. Mr. McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie votes aye. Mr. Knott. Mr. Knott votes aye. Ranking Member Thompson.
Nay.
Ranking Member Thompson votes no. Mr. Swalwell. Mr. Correa. No. Mr. Correa votes no. Mr. Tanadar.
No.
Mr. Tanadar votes no. Mr. Magaziner. Mr. Goldman. Mrs. Ramirez. Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Kennedy votes no. Mrs. McIver. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Hernandez. Ms. Poe. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter votes no. Mr. Green of Texas.
On behalf of the 37 children who've lost their lives, Green votes nay.
Mr. Green of Texas votes no.
Do any members wish to change their vote?
Mr. Chairman, I wish to change my vote to yes.
Mr. Jimenez votes aye.
Are there any other members who have not yet been recorded that wish to vote?
Mr. Crane votes aye.
Mr. Clerk, how am I recorded?
The chairman has not been recorded.
Guest votes aye.
Chairman Guest votes aye.
If the clerk will please report the total.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there were 9 ayes and 6 nays.
The motion to table passes, and the gentleman's request for subpoena will not be taken up. The gentleman has yielded. At this time, the chair would recognize the gentleman from the gentleman from the great state of Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is truly an honor to be a member of the Homeland Security Committee, where we deal with so many important issues on a daily basis. And the breadth of the topics that we are faced with dealing with and discussing is quite extensive. I look forward to continuing the work of this committee on a wide range of issues, some of them raised here today, as we move forward. But the topic at hand is the failings of the Biden administration and how NGOs facilitated the Biden border crisis, where millions of people entered our country illegally during those 4 years. Within that, there was a subset of children. 300,000 children were not effectively monitored, and their whereabouts were sometimes unknown. That was questioned by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and fact checks were done on that. And what did the fact checks come back with? They said, well, you know, the 300,000, it wasn't that they were effectively monitored, but there were just 32,000 who didn't show up for a court case. And so they were at a greater risk of sex trafficking, exploitation, or forced labor. 32,000 children who are left vulnerable. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to ask a single question about that. They don't want to talk about that topic. They want to sweep it under the rug. They want to turn a blind eye. They want to pretend that it didn't happen during the Biden administration because it is politically inconvenient. The welfare of children is something that they don't want to talk about all of a sudden because it happened under a Democratic administration. We have documented cases of rape of children, children working in extremely dangerous conditions, and those unaccompanied minors, when they went to do welfare checks on them, they're unaccounted for, simply gone. But they don't want to ask any questions about that. They don't want to talk about it. And so we have a responsibility as the adults in the room to govern, to do oversight, to do these questions that come before this committee to make sure every American is safe. And as a state representative, I contacted the Biden administration about this very issue. They didn't respond. I contacted our Democratic governor. He didn't respond. Nobody wants to talk about this issue of missing children in our country. So I am glad that we are having this hearing today because we need to get some answers. And so my first question is for Mr. Howell. I want to understand the flow of money, what appropriation, what line item it was in, where it went to DHS, and how it moved to either states to facilitate the movement of these children or to NGOs.
So for the DHS money, most of it went out through FEMA and the SSP program, which was renamed about halfway through the Biden administration. It used to be called something else. But there would be a series of grant-making exercises. A lot of them are publicly posted online where you can see the main organizations that received it. And after that, there are sub-grants and other things. It's very difficult to follow the money all the way from federal government to end recipient, let alone the usage.
So it went through FEMA, which is intended for emergency management in situations like we faced in Texas and was just talked about, but the money was gone. It was used for these programs, you're telling me.
That's absolutely correct. And they begged for more time and time again.
Simply astonishing that the money would be used in that way and not for the safety of the American public in emergency situations. The next question I have is for Ms. Hopper. Who is supposed to have the accountability and responsibility for the well-being of the children? When they move from one agency to the other, does the accountability and responsibility hand off to the next organization? Or is it Homeland Security, since they did the initial intake, they're the ones who should be held ultimately accountable?
It's a very good question. A lot of these agencies are pointing fingers at each other, and without a clear established person or group or agency that's responsible. You had Border Patrol that had 48 hours to move these children, these men, these women through. Then they went to HHS, which, depending on the situation, would outsource that responsibility to NGOs. And so without that clear oversight on who was responsible, it makes it challenging to hold people accountable. But at the end of the day, I would look to whoever is issuing the grant. There is a scope, there are deliverables, there is requirements that need to be met, and so the grant issuer is responsible for managing that contract to make sure everything is being met before issuing more monies.
I appreciate that. I see my time is expiring, and so I would just like to say that this should just be the start of the conversation about what we can do to protect children in this country, whether it's more accountability that needs to be done at the Homeland Security and officials who were in the Biden administration that let this happen, on worksite enforcement where children are being employed in dangerous, violent situations, and also what we can do to stop anything like this from ever happening again by securing our border and having ultimate accountability throughout the entire chain of custody of these children. I just can't thank you enough for being here today. It's an important topic, and we're going to continue to do oversight as we move forward. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The chairman recognizes the gentlelady from Arizona, Mrs. Sari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the opportunity to wave on to the Homeland Security Committee today to speak on an issue that's critically important to my district in Arizona. I represent one of the most diverse districts in the entire country where more than 64 languages are spoken. And first of all, I want to emphasize how vital and life-saving the work of NGOs like Catholic Charities, like the International Rescue Committee, and like Lutheran Social Services has been to constituents in my district. They work day in and day out with very little resources to serve people. The Trump administration's mass deportation policy has demonstrably failed our nation and our values. According to a recent Gallup poll, a 62% margin of folks disapprove of the Trump administration's ineffective, authoritarian, and inhumane immigration policies. I have seen the cruel policies of this administration firsthand in my district. Separating families, masked ICE agents showing up to immigration courts in downtown Phoenix where people had appointments, ripping people away from their families. Detainees in inhumane conditions. This includes DACA recipients. This includes green card holders. This includes US citizens. And deporting innocent people without due process to foreign prisons. It is unconscionable. About 1 month ago, I went to the Eloy detention facility about an hour outside of my district in Phoenix. I spoke with more than a dozen women there who were desperate, devastated about the conditions that they're living in, facing significant harassment. They described a situation where one of the staff members literally forced them outside to march outside in 110-degree Arizona heat, marching around for over 2 hours, yelling at them, quote, "This is the price of the American dream." This is disgusting. And when we're talking about well-being of citizens, even if you believe that these people should not be in the United States, it is embarrassing that our country would be treating any human being like that. So, Mr. Howell, I have a couple of questions for you. Very straightforward, yes or no. Do you support this type of treatment of human beings?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. All the other Democrats haven't asked a question, so I kind of wasn't paying attention. Can you restate it?
Okay. The detention center facility conditions in this country are atrocious. Women are being harassed, they're being dehumanized. In Arizona, they were forced to march outside in 120-degree heat until somebody fainted. I have visited these detention centers as part of my oversight responsibilities. I know you're a big fan of oversight. Do you think that is acceptable treatment of human beings by the United States of America?
For illegal aliens to be detained throughout their immigration proceedings, yes,
To
I
be
think
treated
it's
in
the
that
law.
way. To be treated in
I'm
that
not taking your word for it.
Okay. On top of that, 17 million Americans were just cut off of health care thanks to the vote of all of the Republican colleagues over here. Meanwhile, Republicans just gave more money to ICE and DHS to the tune of $170 billion. It's now one of the largest funded agencies in the world, about 16th or 17th in terms of what a military would look like for other countries. Again, you talked about the importance of oversight, Mr. Howell. Do you believe that members of Congress are legally allowed to conduct oversight of ICE detention facilities?
As we've written extensively the Oversight Project, because we're trying to help keep your colleagues out of jail, like Representative McIver, who was indicted, I misspoke when I said she was arrested, you as an individual member do not have oversight authority. Oversight authority by the rules of the House flows through the full House to the chairman, and that right now is held by the majority. So
It is
despite the
legally
statute
allowed.
that you cite,
Mr.
it's going to
Howell,
end up with more
reclaiming my
Democrats
time.
clogging our
Reclaiming
jails.
my time.
I want to keep you out of jail.
Claiming my time, thank you. It is actually legal for members of Congress to go to detention center facilities that are operated by our government and to conduct oversight. That actually is legally allowed.
That is incorrect.
We also know that the Trump administration is funneling billions and billions of dollars to private for-profit prisons. I heard today a number of $6 billion to NGOs that you all are so concerned about. The private prison companies in this country, like Core Civic and Geo Group, are making billions of dollars in profits because of the massive, and stunning corruption. They gave billions of dollars to elect Donald Trump. Now we're making sure that they make billions of dollars. And speaking of sheer corruption and cover-ups for the ultra-wealthy, Mr. Howell, I know you have spent quite a lot of time talking about the importance of releasing the Epstein files, but now you're kind of parroting Trump talking points about this being a Democratic hoax. I'm wondering if, yes
What
or
did I
no,
say?
do you support the
No, what if I parroted
do you support
about it being a hoax?
It's a yes or no. Do you support
No, it's not. You said something false. I'm asking you to cite what you said, which is clearly false, because I've not said what you said.
Mr. Howell, my question is, do you support the public release of the Epstein files?
My answer is written in an op-ed in the Blaze,
yes
which
or
you
no?
can read.
Yes or no?
Listen, ma'am, I am trying to answer
It's
your
a yes or
question.
no,
You are
Mr. Howell.
lying to the American people
I'm asking you a
in your
simple
misstatements. You
question.
just told a lie in this committee
Mr.
room.
Howell,
I'm
do you-
trying to clear up the record.
It's very simple.
I am trying to answer if you let me speak.
Do you
I think
support
the
it?
public deserves way more transparency than we've got. I've written that. You've accused me of parroting another
It would be
talking point,
wonderful
which
if
I
you
have not.
could
Bring the
follow up.
receipts. You're lying, and everybody knows it.
Mr. Howell, I
The
simply
gentleman
asked
will
you a yes or no
suspend.
question.
The gentlelady's time
It's a
has
yes or no question.
the gentlelady's time has expired. The chair will now recognize Mr. Knight for 5 minutes of questioning.
Mr. Chairman, it's good to be here. Thank you for having this hearing. To the witnesses, I would say thank you. I think I owe you another thank you. This has been quite a long hearing, and unfortunately, the Democrats have obstructed, they've distracted, and they've refused to engage in this topic because it shows that their narrative that they have authored is false. That what happened at the border was just perfectly in line with the norm. It was beneficial to the country. There was nothing they could do about it. Whatever narrative they've written, it is false. This was a designed, intentional, and protected endeavor to bring millions of people into this country regardless of the consequences. It was designed by the Biden-Harris administration, and the Democrats on this committee are still defending it. It's just astounding. They will not say this hurts the American people. Unchecked illegal immigration hurts the American people. We could go on and on. I want to give you all some time to talk. Mr. Howell, starting with you. One of our esteemed colleagues on the other side declared that what happened at the Biden border was not politically motivated. It was all charity. Do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely not. It was a highly coordinated plan executed by some of the most radical elements of this country for the sole purposes of ushering in a massive border crisis, which caused tremendous damage and is still being defended to this day.
Does that affect the electoral count or congressional apportionment?
Absolutely, it affects the census.
Do you think that that is lost on Democratic governors, senators, and congressmen and the Biden-Harris administration?
It is absolutely not.
Was there a plan to send them to politically sensitive states?
I think they send them everywhere, but the highest concentrations are the urban areas, which are clearly of benefit to the Democrats.
Was there evidence that these individuals here illegally were coached on how to register to vote, where to go, what to say, how to evade capture from immigration officials?
Correct. It's happening still today with these nonprofits coaching them on how to evade. As for the voting, as this country's voting system became a laughingstock with the mass mail-in ballots, we have evidence from the Biden White House of a listening session they held with these radical activists where they were encouraging the Biden White House not to even ask people if they were citizens before trying to register them to vote.
It's worth noting that the Democratic Party is staunchly and uniformly against voter ID, no matter what state has been proposed. Just a random thought. Ms. Hopper, what interest do international parties have in sending millions of people to this country illegally, including children?
Particularly the countries that we have visited, a lot of the individuals that are leaving are criminals in their home countries. So their governments, their country's government, have no interest in retaining them. You are having the worst of the worst leave your country. You are having a decrease in crime because the worst of the worst are leaving your country.
Is there also financial incentives? Are they not sending money out of this country back to their home countries?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They make money in this country.
So they're getting rid of criminals, and then they're taking home money.
Exactly.
Amazing. You mentioned earlier, I'm sorry for being quick, there was one person at this call center for abused children, 65,000 unanswered phone calls. Let's back up before they even got here. How many people were in charge of vetting the millions of people that came across the border? And vetting is being used as though it happened. Vetting did not happen, did it?
Not in a meaningful way, no.
It was a process. They were processed into the country.
Supposedly, and not in a consistent way.
Right. Now, I've got one more question, Mr. Rosa. I want to give you a chance to respond to Mr. Green. He looked right at you and said he didn't believe that you really thought that children were mistreated by a charity with the name Catholic in it. I want to make a distinction. It was not an extension of the Catholic Church. This was a uniformly named charity with the word Catholic in it. But I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, yeah, because the reason why that was just a weird thing to say is because the people at the border, they know how these things work, right? This isn't new. So these NGOs, not just Catholic charities, a whole bunch of them, they knew that the vetting wasn't done, that this was being done haphazardly because of the volume, right? The volume overwhelmed the system. And so there are shortcuts that need to be taken.
By design.
By design, exactly. Yes. And so they still took the money to do that. They knew that these children were being abused. Before they arrived at the border, there was probably gonna happen after they got to their final destination, whether it's a workplace or sexual abuse. And they still took the money because it was taxpayer dollars. And they increased their pockets. And so, it's very frustrating because I've seen children as young as 7 crossing by themselves. I saw a girl hold a 2-year-old. It's just them. So he doesn't know me. A lot has been said about our credibility, but I've been there and I've seen it, and this was a big problem.
Yep. Well, I'll close with this. Again, this was the biggest problem that I have seen in my lifetime. And it's going to take decades to fix. And it's astounding that the Democratic Party not only built it, not only implemented it, but they are still defending it. And the American people need to know that if they get back in power, those open border policies and the flood of mass migration will return. We cannot let that happen. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt. With consultation with the ranking member, there are no closing statements in this matter. I would like to thank our witnesses for being with us today. And would like to remind our witnesses that members of the committee may have additional questions for you. And we would ask the witnesses to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7E, the hearing record will be held open for a period of 10 days. Without objection, this committee stands adjourned.